there's a lot of really fantastic, highly progressive manufacturing businesses out there. So don't hesitate to go look up some of those really great industrials. You have to do a little bit of homework to get underneath of it because you'll end up going working for the operating company. You'll never buy anything that was sold by IDEX or sold by Dover, but you'll buy plenty of things that are made by them through another outlet that you never recognize the name. We did things like we make the jaws of life, right? So you flip your car over and you got to get cut out. We make that big crazy contraption that cuts the door off and then saves a person, right? Like really cool stuff that you kind of never think about, but those businesses are really fantastic. They're good, high growing, high margin businesses, and you can really have a lot of great career options in manufacturing in general.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for listening. And do not forget to share with your friends, especially your friends that are interested in accounting for this episode, because we've got Chip McAslan on the show. You can find him at LinkedIn, Chip McAslan. He's an Ironman. He's a triathlete. He worked at KPMG and ended up an entrepreneurial CEO. He's going to talk about excellence is doing simple things spectacularly. And we're going to explore all sorts of careers in accounting, finance, M&A, niche manufacturing. Welcome to the show and welcome to the Edge of Excellence. Well, Chip, I know you're a busy guy. Thank you so much for making it on the show and welcome to the Edge of Excellence.
Thanks, Matt. Great to hear from you today, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for volunteering to come on. I appreciate hearing from accounting professions, manufacturing, the story to CEO from that angle, but we're going to start off the way we always start off. Chip, what is your definition of excellence?
Yeah, it's I've listened to this podcast a few times, and it's hard not to repeat some of the great things that have been said. But my definition, it's a little twist on one you've heard before, but it's not about doing spectacular things. It's about doing simple things spectacularly. And it was a mentor of mine from probably 10 years ago who really instilled this one with me. And really the main takeaway is, honestly, fundamentals will get you a long way, and fundamentals will, done every single time well, done every single day, done flawlessly, are plenty more than enough to get you ahead. The big flashy things, whether it's, kind of big splashy things in business, or in life, ultimately they don't really make a big difference if you can't execute on a day-to-day every single time. So it's not about doing spectacular things, but doing simple things spectacularly.
All right. I love it. And no one's ever said it. And it's interesting because you're coming from the accounting and finance background. Accounting is not simple, but it's repetitive. And maybe doing accounting spectacularly, in my mind as a CEO, it's advising the executive team, standing up to the people that want to do it their way with the kind of the way to do it, being a good advisor. What does it mean to you to do the simple things in accounting spectacularly?
Yeah, well, I'm in manufacturing. And so from an accounting side, maybe it's not as, maybe not as easy to see, but when you start talking about shipping widgets to people, doing simple things spectacularly is making it right every single time. So perfect quality every single time, shipping it out in a reasonable lead time, shipping it to the right place with the right packaging, the right colors that people order, and really making sure that you make the thing that someone needs and you get it to them in a timely fashion. Think someone like Amazon, right? You order something and it shows up the next day every single time. It's simple. And over time, it really becomes a great business and great model, but it's really that, do what you say you're going to do and get it right every single time.
Well, I guess it should be simple, but when you have quite a few employees and you have quite a few products and you have quite a few logistics vendors, it's not so simple. And if you have a culture in your business, and I know you don't have this in your business, CFS Technology, but if you don't have the culture of doing simple things spectacularly, the wrong color goes to the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're really screwing up companies, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's when you're a piece of a supply chain like we are, people are relying on us. We sell to chemical companies who then sell essentially large packages to think hotels, restaurants, hospitals. So we make the chemical dispensing and dilution control equipment. So we help mix chemical and water for spray bottles and mop buckets and into laundry and things like that. But if there's not a piece of equipment on the wall or in the janitor's closet to be able to move chemistry, then that the hotel's not getting clean, the hospital's not getting clean, and customers got a big problem.
Yeah, you don't put the actual cleaning fluid in right. You're not cleaning, you're just spreading the germs around.
Exactly. Yeah, we're the necessary evil to make sure chemical gets used every day.
And I think I told you this when we were talking at some point in time, that I know that I had a chemical company, and it taught me a lot about core competency, because it wasn't my core competency. And I thought my core competency was sales. So if I can sell construction, I can sell chemicals. And we outsourced our chemical manufacturing. And I don't know if I told you this part, but we got a call from the FAA and we were fined $36,000 because our chemical, it turned out, the way it was mixed, combusted at 110 degrees, and it was on a FedEx plane, I believe. And while it was over Nevada, it caught on fire. And, we had to throw everything away, start over. So somewhere something got mixed wrong. And I don't know, we put people's lives in danger because of that, right?
Yeah, that's you did tell that story. It's an interesting one. And the mental image of this plane flying overhead with the back of it on fire is it's pretty amazing.
Dave McCullough, that's the name I've been looking for. Shout out to Dave McCullough, who saved me. He was the one that had the blending company that remade everything and did it right. And I'll find the name of the company when we're not on the air, but we are on the air. So we're going to just get into your story. And before we get into the background of how you got to where you got, a lot of people are sitting in accounting classes, and they don't know what they want to do, or they're in finance classes and they don't know what they want to do. And you went through these different companies, and from an accounting role and an M&A role, you ended up in, what's the role now?
So now I'm the CEO of CFS Technologies, and I also am the board chair of the Bay Cities Group. It's actually a sheet metal roofing business throughout California.
Never a CFO though.
Never a CFO, no.
So as people are listening to this, they want to go into accounting. They don't really know what it means. And you take accounting classes, you kind of figure out what it means. But a lot of people, people that can talk and do accounting, people that can negotiate and do accounting, people that can build relationships and do accounting, end up in this CEO role. And you ended up in the CEO role through that finance angle. And a lot of people get there through my angle, the sales angle. Maybe they get there through the HR angle. Maybe they get there through the accounting angle. What was it that made you want to jump into that CEO role instead of just the M&A role?
Yeah, well, let me talk about accounting for a quick second. You brought up an interesting point that people may not kind of understand this angle sometimes. So as an accountant, really as an auditor, I was an auditor with KPMG. And what's amazing is you get basically an unfettered backstage pass to every company you work on. So if you're a curious person like I am and definitely was, kind of the early stages of my career, you can see and learn everything about a business from the ground up, with that backstage pass as the auditor and as the accountant. And fundamentally, it's the best way to learn how to learn about a business. I mean, you go in and you see dozens of businesses every year. You see them in incredible depth. And you get to learn more in those first couple of years if you're willing to put in as much time as you possibly can, sit in every single meeting, even the ones that you're not invited to, just ask to go join and take notes. You can learn so much as a young accountant, right? Whether it's audit or advisory, whatever it may be, it's a really an unbelievable way to lay a great foundation as a young person. So I don't know that I was the best accountant. I get bored doing the same thing over and over and over and over again from a historical audit standpoint. But I loved going in and learning about businesses, loved learning how people ran businesses, see it really from the ground up, obviously through the lens of accounting and finance. But really you get to see everything from operations and sales and figure out how the best run companies in the world are actually run. And from that standpoint, it's a really an incredible entree to people's careers if you're thinking about that from a college standpoint.
Yeah, so if you're sitting there and you're finishing up college, or maybe you finished up a couple of years ago, and you don't really know what you want to do, welcome to the club. Chip didn't know, I didn't know. If you think you do know, you're probably wrong. So one way to get exposure is to tell your friends about this podcast. Another way to get exposure is you could be a consultant, that works, or an auditor, and you get this backstage pass, and you can figure out what your skill set is, what you want to do, what your passions are, what's your unique ability. And you realize, okay, I'm good at accounting. I like accounting. Some of it's a little too repetitive for me. What else can I do? And you're exposed to these different executive roles, and you're exposed to this strange world of manufacturing, which we're going to get into after we go back in time. So before you worked at KPMG, before you were CEO of CFS Technology, before you were head of strategy and M&A and running different companies in Amsterdam, you went to high school and college. So you were in high school in Ohio, right?
That's right, in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. It's east side of Cleveland, little tiny town. I don't know the population, but our high school was about 125 kids a grade, something like that. Small public high school.
Okay, shout out to the Cleveland Clinic. Shout out to John DeJulius out there. I hope you're listening, John DeJulius, who is also on this podcast from Cleveland, Ohio. And so what was life like when you were in high school? Were you in sports? Were you a straight A student? Did you know you always wanted to be a CEO one day? What was it like?
Yeah, so it was a lot of sports. I played ice hockey and football, and that really, when you're in small town Ohio, particularly if you play football, it's kind of the religion. So I mean, it was kind of felt like big fish in a small pond. Small school. We were at Division 5 or something like that, so it didn't have the big kind of take over the world, athletic teams. But that's just what we did. It was not necessarily straight A student. I was always kind of in that 3.5 to 3.8 range, something like that. One school always came easy to me. I actually skipped a grade, skipped 4th grade, and I'm an April birthday, so I've always been the kind of the youngest in the class, and never really struggled with school, if that makes sense. So kind of did the bare amount to kind of keep a good enough grades to get into college, and then just as much sports I could cram in.
So you were playing ice hockey in college too?
Frat league.
Frat league. Okay, so you're in high school. You're playing sports. 3.5 to 3.8 out of a 4.0 back then. So you're doing pretty well. We didn't have the 4.5s and the 5.0s and the 6.0s back then. So you're a pretty good student, and you go off to college. You're doing sports for kind of a pastime. And when you got to college, school probably didn't come as easy anymore. How did you figure out your major? How did you figure out what your next step was?
Yeah, so major was an easy one. I knew I wanted to go into finance, and I was pretty certain I wanted to go into accounting. I had some family friends, and also my dad as well too, who was in business and was an accounting guy. So I always knew I wanted to lean that direction. At Miami, you really didn't have to make that decision until junior year. So freshman year was just your general elective. Sophomore year, you start to focus in a little bit. It was just general business classes. And then, when you talk about like not really knowing exactly, where you want to go and why, I went to Luxembourg to Miami's international program the first semester of junior year with like 15 buddies, and had an incredible semester. We did, the bare minimum amount of work, but traveled and kind of got a European liberal arts vacation / semester out of it. Came back, and it was job fair time, and got 5 different job offers within a few weeks of coming back home at the beginning of second semester, and hadn't even taken a serious accounting class or really anything detailed in like audit or tax or anything. So kind of job was lined up even before I'd taken my first true accounting and audit class, which is sort of strange. Then went to classes that kind of validated what I thought I wanted to do, which was nice, but maybe an atypical sort of college pathway.
Yeah, so the economy must have been just pumping then.
Ripping, baby. It was post Sarbanes-Oxley, and I couldn't hire enough accountants fast enough at the time.
Okay, so that's going to end soon. But if you're listening to this in 2022, you've got some time. If it's 2023, the time may have run out. So, and we hear this on the show a lot, and people think about what resources do I have. I grew up in New Mexico. I didn't have a lot of resources, but you look at your friends, you look at your classes. You grew up in Ohio, and I don't know what your resources were, but you had a dad that you could listen to and hear what he did. And maybe you're listening right now, and your dad or your mom don't do what you want to do, but you can listen about what their friends do, or you can figure out what you don't want to do. And then in addition to your your parents and your family, you talk to your family friends about what they did, and they start to give you some guidance. Then you go to class and you either like the classes or you don't. So you're kind of narrowing your path down. Then you go to semester at sea, or not semester at sea, semester abroad in Luxembourg. Strange place to go. Don't know too many people that go to Luxembourg, and I've actually been there. And you catch that travel bug, which comes into your story later. So you come back from traveling with 15 friends. That's great.
The whole program was actually 100. It was like
15 all from your school?
Oh yeah. 15 folks just from our fraternity went, and then I mean, it rounds out the rest of it. So it was a blast.
Do they still do this at Miami of Ohio?
Yeah, they do. They own actually like a castle in oh gosh, I think it's called Differdange is the city. And I mean, Luxembourg's pretty small. It's like a 45-minute train ride from Luxembourg City. And yeah, there's kids there every semester and then all summer.
Okay, there is an advertisement going on right now for University of Miami, Ohio. I also love Northeastern. You know, Northeastern, they have the co-op program. Miami of Ohio has this study abroad. If you get out of your comfort zone and you're trying different things, you know, Chip here is figuring out his accounting career, and we're going to get into his network and how they play into his career later. But you start getting this travel bug. And I guess one of these companies that offered you a job was KPMG, one of the big four accounting firms.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, it was targeting Chicago, as most people were coming out of Miami. It was a lot of Midwestern folks. So yeah, I ended up going to Chicago was there 2004 to 2008. Got married in July of 2008, and then we moved in November to Amsterdam, actually.
Okay, so 2004 to 2008, you were working at KPMG in Chicago.
That's correct. Yep.
And so my brother worked at Microsoft, and one of the things at Microsoft, they wanted you to travel if you wanted to rise up the ranks, and you're pretty much not going to go very far if you're not willing to go to another country and try it out. And if you're listening right now, it's not a bad deal. You get to go check out another country. They'll put you in corporate housing. They give you allowances to fly back. You get to experience a whole nother world. Was that part of the KPMG kind of path to leadership?
Yeah. With KPMG, kind of. I mean, KPMG is a little bit more compared to other routes in business. I would say it's a little bit more tenure based sometimes. A lot of my kind of peers who were there at the same time from other businesses. We had folks there from Stryker Medical being one of them, and Starbucks had some people over there. And for those guys who were in more of a, let's say, traditional corporate setting, absolutely. I mean, willing to kind of uproot yourself and your family and then go live in Europe it would put you half a decade or more in front of somebody else from a career standpoint. No doubt about that.
That was in the corporate world. KPMG, not so much. And is that because tax law in Europe is different than tax law in the US, and they want you to figure out which area you're going to focus in?
I think it's more about the partnership structure.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, there's always that, you get to about 15 years at KPMG and you make partner plus or minus a year or two, maybe 2 years, something like that if you're a stud. So does it really alter that pathway to get to something that's largely time-based? Not necessarily. Great exposure, being able to say, hey, I can literally and figuratively speak that language. I understand how international business works firsthand and not just from Zoom calls. Yeah. But for my KPMG pathway, it didn't really make a big difference.
Okay. So again, if you're listening right now, maybe you're into accounting, maybe you're into finance, maybe you're into business, maybe you're into nursing, who knows? But there's an opportunity to go abroad, expand your horizons. So you're in Chicago for 4 years. You go to Amsterdam, I guess, just working at KPMG for 1 more year, right?
Yeah, it was about 1.5 years at KPMG. And then I actually got recruited from my old boss who had left KPMG to go to a company called IDEX, which is a mid-cap diversified industrial company. And what that means is we do about $2.5 billion in sales. We had about 60 facilities all around the world, publicly traded, headquarters in Chicago. And he recruited me to come do finance and mergers and acquisitions for them based out of Amsterdam still.
Okay, so you're in the auditing role. You may be getting sick of the auditing role. You've been exposed with this backstage pass to all these opportunities. You're doing simple things spectacularly. People know, and you get recruited by your old boss. And I want to stop there because people listening right now, they know that you should maintain relationships. They know that that old fraternity saying, it doesn't matter what you know, it matters who you know. And I've adjusted that. It doesn't matter what you know or who you know. It matters what you do with what you know and who you know. So this old boss How did you stay in contact with them? How did he feel confident reaching out with you? How did it go down that someone calls you from your past and invites you to come work in this new company instead of somebody else?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in, relationship building is something you either do very actively, or I mean, it's hard to kind of go halfway on that, right? Like, at least in my standpoint, I keep in touch with a small group of people and keep in very, very close contact with them for the most part, as opposed to having 10,000 people that I casually reach back out to. It's some of it's strategic, sure. Some of it is just great fit and great personality. That old boss is someone who I'd worked very, very closely with for years. In ththose early days at KPMG, we're in the same room for 8 to 10 hours some days, and then would go out at night after that. And I think when you kind of build that level of trust and relationship and rapport with people, you tend to find yourself sort of intersecting over the course of the next 5, 10, 20 years. I need someone I still talk with at least once a year. Still in similar industries, and he's in the Chicago area still, and keep in touch, whether it's just kind of general mentorship or what's going on, and are you looking for anything, and how can I help you, how can you help me, how's the family doing. I don't know, I think just being a good person. If you gravitate towards someone and you've got that great relationship, don't let it go by the wayside.
I think, you finally you answered a question that I haven't been able to articulate the how and really make it understandable. It's sincerely maintaining relationships. It's not strategic. And you said, you have a couple strategic relationships. I call bullshit on that because I know you pretty well. I think you have sincere relationships. I have sincere relationships, and then you add effort. So anybody can have sincere relationships. Everybody listening right now has them, but you add effort. Do you reach out and call? Do you make time to visit them when you're in town? And it's the people you like. You're not doing it with the people you don't like. They know you don't like them. You're not doing it to use someone for the future. They know that you're mooching off of them. You're meeting people that you like, and anybody can do that. It's adding the effort step, adding the reach out, adding the birth date to your calendar, adding the wedding anniversary to your calendar, calling them in their time of need. Somebody passed away in their family, remembering what that day was and calling, because you listening right now are sincerely a good person, and you know who the people are you sincerely want to be with. If you add a little effort to that relationship, then you guys lift each other. And I'm sure this person, you've lifted him or her, he or she's lifted you. They brought you into a business that you ended up helping them out with. Maybe you bring them into a deal. And it's not because you're trying to help each other out. It's not because you're mooching. It's because you actually sincerely care, and you're going to throw a little effort behind something you care about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also don't be afraid to reach back out to people that you've known. I mean, I think people kind of get stuck in the I haven't talked to this person for a year, 2 years, 3 years. I don't know if I should call them up. Just call them up. If you've got a good or had a good relationship with somebody at one point, even if it's just something emotional or strong you've had at some point, those bonds are still strong enough to reach back out. Don't be afraid to go exercise those contacts and networks.
And the Lord works in mysterious ways. If you're getting a gut feeling to reach out to somebody while you're listening to this, reach out to them. There's some serendipitous, strange force in the world calling you guys together, you people together. I'm glad we clarified that, because I've had that pop up. And you and I know when people call us and they're trying to mooch off us. You and I know when people call up and they just want something. And we also know when people all I think about as I'm saying this is my business partner's son, Derek. And Derek lost his brother to suicide, and he came and kind of moved in here right after that happened. And Derek will call me up, I don't know, once a quarter. Hey, I want to swing by and have dinner. And every time I'm thinking, man, I got to call Derek more often. And I told his dad, I said, Jay, your son is so good at maintaining relationships. He doesn't want anything from me. There's nothing he can get from me. His dad's my partners, that we share everything equally. He's just reaching out of sincerity to maintain a relationship. And I totally appreciate it. I probably talked about it on the show before. People know when it's sincere, and it isn't easy to put effort into something, but it's not hard either. You just got to remember. So you maintain relationships with this guy, and maybe it was a random call and he's like, hey, you should come over here and work at IDEX. And you thought, okay, it's time for me to go. And you jumped over to IDEX and you moved into finance and M&A. what is finance and M&A? And it doesn't matter if you're at a manufacturing pumps or you're manufacturing shoes or you're working in a service company. What is finance and M&A, and what skills did you need for that?
Yeah, and before I answer that, there's also the listenership out there. There's also the question of what the hell is an IDEX,
Okay.
because there's also a huge world of of just manufacturing companies that, as you're looking at all those potential places to go in your career. Yeah, IDEX, competes with companies, a bunch of places you'd never hear of, the Dovers and Danaher and Honeywell and Illinois Toolworks, and all these businesses that are large global collections of really, really great niche manufacturing businesses. So niche manufacturing generally is, let's say, a 50 to $500 million manufacturing company. They usually make a very specific widget or component that makes the world go round. We did a lot of pumps, for example. It could be anything from pumps used to make make and process food and chocolate, or shampoo and hair conditioner, all the way to like water and wastewater pumps, things you'd find in like a municipal water treatment facility, and honestly a million other things in between. And a lot of people kind of come out of school and they're like, I'm going to work at Apple and Google and Tesla, and I'm going to go to Silicon Valley or go to Wall Street or whatever it may be. And there's a lot of really fantastic, highly progressive manufacturing businesses out there. So don't hesitate to go look up some of those really great industrials. You have to do a little bit of homework to get underneath of it, because you end up working for the operating company. You'll never buy anything that was sold by IDEX or sold by Dover, but you'll buy plenty of things that are that are made by them through another outlet that you'd never recognize the name. We did things like we make the jaws of life, right? So you flip your car over and you got to get cut out. We make that big crazy contraption that cuts the door off and then saves a person, right? Like really cool stuff that you kind of never think about, but those businesses are really fantastic. They're good, high growing, high margin businesses, and you can really have a lot of great career options in manufacturing in general.
You're looking for what you're going to be doing in a company. You're looking for a company with the values and the culture. But if you limit yourself to Apple, Tesla, and SpaceX, you're missing the other 400 booths at the career fair. And there might be the most wonderful person that you'll be tied to for the rest of your life, working in a company that you've never heard of. And I bet, and I should look this up, I bet there's 10 times as many companies that are behind the scenes as there are brands we know of, maybe 100 times. Who makes the threads for the Cavelli suit? Who makes the buttons for the ASIC shoes or whatever it is? So you're keeping your eyes open, and this person comes to you and you kind of already know that, there's this cool stuff going on behind the scenes. And so you come in to a company that maybe people haven't heard of before, but doing the same thing that's happening in every company. Maybe there's better opportunities for you because you're in Amsterdam, they're in Amsterdam, you speak a couple languages, they need those languages. And what were you doing as in the finance and M&A role in that cool business?
Yeah, absolutely. So M&A, again, for the for the viewership out there, is mergers and acquisitions. So, and from a finance side, I was kind of doing double duty. So I was in the finance department of a company called Fast and Fluid Management. They make the pink shakers and mixers that you'd find in Home Depot. So when you go to Home Depot and you put you say, I need this baby blue eyes colored paint, you put it in the machine, it drops little droplets in, puts a color in, and then puts it in a separate machine and shakes it around, and you got your paint. So we make those for Europe. So I was in the finance department there. Out of Amsterdam, where they manufacture those systems. And at the same time, we had just acquired a collection of, I think it was 13 sites around the world for a business that IDEX just bought. And so I had three of the sites, one in the Netherlands and two in the UK, that I was going and traveling around basically every week and working with the finance group and the general managers of the sites and kind of teaching them the IDEX way. So getting them integrated to the business, kind of first and foremost from a finance side, and then working with them on operations plans, just overall kind of systems integration to IDEX, and then also their kind of go forward plans and strategy, how they're going to grow those businesses as part of the IDEX group.
So simple things spectacularly was the IDEX way. And you talk about those paint color mixers. First of all, we don't talk about Home Depot. We talk about Sherwin-Williams. Sherwin-Williams, the greatest chemical company in the world. Sherwin-Williams that uses those same paint injectors to make the color perfect every time. Back when I got into the paint business back in the day, they used to use these little hand things and they'd eyeball it, and you'd have to mix all the colors together because it was never exactly right. So you guys figured out how to do a simple thing spectacularly, get the exact right size single drop sometimes into the big 5-gallon bucket. So it's made perfectly. And then in M&A, there's the finance side. How are we going to pay for it? What are the numbers? What's the best financing? Where are we going to get the deal structure? What's this going to do to our balance sheet? What's this going to do to our debt line? We just bought a company. So, how much are we going to have to go into our line of credit to fund it? That's the finance side. The M&A side, you could be helping select the right company, looking at the deals, analyzing the deals, or in your case, you're also integrating the business. So after it's acquired, you got to integrate it in the systems and methods of the parent company, and probably the cultural integration of the parent company. So if you're in finance and you're a people person, or you're in accounting and you're a people person, if you work well with others, but you also love numbers, you work well with others, or you also love systems, you might be good for the M&A integration side of a business. And now we've just talking to Chip here, we've got like 75 different jobs you can look at if you're in accounting, but it's going to take a little effort. So you go into IDEX and you start, I guess, getting a passion for, still you're traveling. So you've got this company that nobody ever heard of, that you're traveling all around to these different sites. You're meeting all sorts of cool people. You're bringing them into the culture, and you, I guess, do really well in there. And then how do you jump from that security of working in this big business, probably getting paid a lot? How do you jump from that to starting your own chemical dispensing business?
Yeah, good question. And you mentioned sort of travel and the bouncing around too. I mean, there's yeah, in a big company like that, I kind of took the route of, I was willing to move anywhere and move as fast as they wanted me to go up the ladder, quite honestly. So, went from Amsterdam back to Chicago, was there 18 months or so, then went to Indianapolis, was there about 18 months. And then the last pit stop with IDEX was out to California. And those 4 moves were in the span of, a little under 6 years, something like that. My older daughter, who was born in Amsterdam, had lived in Chicago, Indianapolis, and California, plus 2 or 3 corporate houses in between by the time she was like 2.5, 3 years old. It was I think it's a great career path. You're willing to do that, particularly sort of early in your career and maybe before family and before the house and white picket fence. There's great opportunities to go around the globe with those big companies. It takes a toll on you, but it's a great way to see a lot and move up the ladder. So yeah, my last pit stop with IDEX was the president and general manager of a business out here in California. It was in the chemical dispensing and equipment space. And I was there for a couple of years, and absolutely loved the business. And it was a space that I looked at it and said, hey, I love what they do in terms of macroeconomics. There's more people on the planet every day. Everyone needs access to clean food and clean surfaces. This is all pre-COVID, kind of before anyone honestly really cared about clean. And the twist that I sort of liked or saw in the future was the ability to wrap data around that. And so started a company that had that same idea around, kind of clean, but then integrating sensors and kind of flow monitoring equipment to be able to prove clean using data in several applications. So really it was, starting the new business was not necessarily to compete exactly with that, with the old business, but to be able to say, hey, I think there's a future need for, literally proving clean. I mean, we did a lot of laundry, right? And it's there's sort of a funny adage that so you ever hear, like, if you go to a hotel and it's like, oh, you wake up in the middle of the night and you're itchy, it's because the hotel's dirty and it's got bed bugs. Yeah, it's not typically this dirty bed bug process at your hotel. It's 9 times out of 10 it's because the chemicals they use to wash your sheets are actually off. So when you do like industrial laundry, you're really messing with in your chemical bath. It goes extremely basic to make it extremely clean to pull the dirt off, and then you do an acid injection, and that acid brings your pH back to 7.5, where you need to be for it to be neutral, basically pH neutral. That's what your skin likes. A lot of times, not a lot, on occasion in a hotel laundry, if it's missing, let's say, the acid, you could have sheets that are extremely basic. They come out of the wash at like a 12, right? If you sleep in something like sheets that have, that much, the pH is off that much, you're going to wake up itchy in the middle of the night. Similarly, if it's got, if the acid's there, but your base is actually off or it's out of chemical, then your sheets are also going to be messed up there as well, too. long and short of it, we said was like, if you're a hotel operator or you're a guest at a hotel, you don't care about any of that crap that's happening down in the laundromat. You just want to know that your sheets got clean. And so what we said is, how do you take new technology into this to actually make sure that chemicals are going into, a washing machine in this case, at the right amounts at the right times, so the stuff coming out the other end of it is clean and is done as advertised.
So you travel around with your family, you're crushing it with your simple things spectacularly, and you rise up the ranks in this company, jump out of KPMG where you could have become partner in 10 more years. You go to IDEX, you're moving around, you're rising up, you're crushing it, you're adding effort, just like the effort you put into your relationships, you put that into your job. And then you find this kind of special niche that you love. And, you're a data nerd and that's your special sauce. And you decide, I'm going to go off and start a company that I'm going to build on just this special sauce. Maybe the people at IDEX weren't as interested as you were, but that's usually how it happens. There's something you're so passionate about. You want to bet the farm on it. You want to go off and make it happen. So you roll out of IDEX and you roll into founding Lavo Solutions. And I knew you at that time, didn't I?
Yeah.
I knew you at IDEX. And then you left IDEX, and I believe you took a huge pay cut. I believe you took big risk. I believe you're back to the ramen days. I mean, maybe I'm speaking a little too far, but you went out there and took a big risk when you did this, right?
Yeah, I mean, being a founder is it's no joke. you know this, obviously firsthand. And yeah, I think for a lot of people, I think the risk is largely worth the reward. But when people give those stats of like, oh yeah, it's going to take twice as much work and twice as much money, and
they're lying. It's 4 times as much work and 4 times as much money.
That's exactly right. It's it's maybe 10, whatever the number is, like multiply it by 5. It's a significant amount of work. And yeah, particularly coming out of the safety and comfort of a large public company or a large accounting firm, it's a shock to the system. There's no doubt about that. I think it's fun, it's enjoyable. I mean, there's that sort of the adage of like the highs are much higher and the lows are really really low, and there's not a lot of people that really truly understand what you do. But yeah, if you truly believe in it, it's I think it's worth it. It can be rewarding. But yeah, you gotta, if you don't have a high threshold for pain, I don't know if going corporate world off to starting a company from scratch is going to be your jam. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's a really good clarification. You got to, for some people, it's not right. And don't forget the significant others. I mean, they're along for the ride too. And I was talking to somebody and they were talking about how, they're, the person. I was talking to someone's, they're having a problem in their marriage, and the spouse is saying, he's gone and he goes on these trips and we lost all our money and I can't afford to do this and we can't afford to do that. And I'm like, hey, that's what you signed up for. Yeah. You married an established entrepreneur, and the company went down that he was running, and then he started a new company. I mean, so you and your significant other need to be ready for that. No matter how confident you are, how great you think you are, how perfect everything's going to be, how easy it is to slide into this company because everybody there already, things go down and it's going to be tough on you, tough on your spouse. So maybe it's not right for you and you continue in the corporate environment, which my brother did, and he's crushed it there, and a lot of people do. Maybe it is, but you had a belief in yourself. You had a history of doing things spectacular. You had this weird passion for this exactness, and you decided, I'm going to jump. And I'm sure you had family meetings about it, and you jumped, and then you start going, and then eventually you brought in other people's money, right?
Yeah, a little, for sure. I mean, I probably put the vast majority of it in, but then yeah, I had some family money put in, some third party debt, SBA debt, things like that. I mean, it's yeah, particularly starting a manufacturing company from scratch, it requires capital, a ton of time. And it's B2B. I mean, it's long sales cycle. I mean, this isn't like I've got a product and someone buys it tomorrow off the internet. I mean, our sales cycle is such that you have a product, you need to sell it to somebody, you need to go convince the engineer at that company that it's the right thing to fit with their application. Then they got to test it for a few months. Then if they like it, they'll have 5 other people test it. Then if that works, now you're 6 months down the road. You got to get in front of the marketing department, make sure it all works and fits in their program. I mean, you're easily an 18 to 24-month sales cycle with the vast majority of customers. So it's no immediate gratification. You got to be ready for it to take some time to get spooled up.
4 times as much time. Okay, so we had to add something in there. So you go through this life of trying these different things out, keeping your relationships going, keeping your eyes open, using your resources. You got the history of spectacular results and simple and other things. You got the passion, you got the belief in yourself, you got the family on board, and then you got the timing. So a lot of times people listening here, they're going to, if I don't do it, I hear by 30. If I don't get this done by 30, I'm a total failure. If I haven't done this by 30, if I don't make $1 gazillion a year by 30, if I don't own my own company by 30, and they end up living the van life because it didn't happen by 30. Right. You got to wait. You got to take the opportunities as they come to you, and you waited for the perfect timing. And I thought you actually went and rose equity money. You didn't. You used your personal money. You don't have personal money unless you wait until you have personal money. You don't have personal money unless you're saving money as you're making it and stashing it aside. You don't get family money because it doesn't matter what you know, it matters who you know. If your parents are the Rockefellers, they're not going to give you the money if they don't believe in you. You're not going to get an SBA loan if you don't have a history and people feel like they're going to get their money back. So all this came together in the perfect storm, and off you go and you start this company that's doing wonderfully still here in Southern California, right?
Yeah, and I'd say going wonderfully, yes. And then COVID hit, and then all bets were off as well then too, right? So even if you think you've got the timing right, something can still come out of left field and derail things.
And that's where you test your Zen abilities to get over it, right?
100%. Yeah, that's the resilience and grit books that everyone's written like 8,000 things about. But I'd say coming back to two different points you mentioned, about I want to get it all done by 30, whatever it may be. And I think there's that, the comment about fake it till you make it, I think is extremely dangerous. And it kind of comes back to what I was saying before about, early in your career, I kind of believe that, like, if you're going to be really successful, you have to know a certain amount of stuff all said and done, or have exposure to a certain amount of things. And I think there's extreme power in front loading that in your career. So, those early 20s, when you got nothing else to do but hang out in your apartment and, hang out with your friends, obviously do all that, but like go to work, go put in 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And I mentioned, like, in that accounting world, go to extra meetings, go work, go ask for extra assignments, go learn as much as you can. It's kind of like if you need 10,000 hours of knowledge to be really successful or good at something, you got time, your first couple of jobs to go do that. Go load up your brain early. It's only going to benefit you down the road. And then it'll give you a better opportunity at 30, 31, 32 to be able to go and actually do that educated and, with a great foundation and not just be out there guessing.
That's a really good point. So it's again, use of your resources. You use your relationships well. You put the effort in to connect with them. You're in Amsterdam, maybe because you're in a strange place where you don't know everybody. You got nothing to do on Friday night. Why not try something new out? But it's the rule of 72. Just like investing in your retirement, you put money away early, you can retire early. You put experience away early, you can excel early. And by the way, I keep thinking of how am I going to rope Sean Baldwin's name into this podcast? Because, I always try to do that. And I'm going to give up on trying to rope Sean Baldwin into this. I'm just going to say Sean Baldwin, and we've done it. I want to get back to your early success. When you're at Miami of Ohio, did you kind of see yourself one day being an entrepreneur? I know you probably didn't see yourself in the businesses you've been in. Did you see yourself as an entrepreneur? Did you see, I expect one day to be CEO, or is it a surprise?
Yeah, I actually started a small company in Miami with one of my best friends. Coincidentally, his name's Chip, which is funny enough. So it's Chip and Chip. And we started essentially a little online tool that was essentially what's going on in Oxford. It was like essentially like news clips, and then like what bar and restaurant specials were happening that night or that week, things like that. It was kind of also it was an interesting idea. I wish we would have put more time and effort into it. Probably be feeling real smart about an internet company at the moment. But we did that, and it was kind of it was a way to just have beer money, honestly. It took a little bit of time. We got some folks in town to sponsor it. Basically, all the bars and restaurants we were going to anyway. And paid for beer money senior year. So I always had a little bit of the entrepreneurial bug. Interesting enough, that Chip I was talking about started a wine business, and he sold it to Berkshire Hathaway a few years ago. So maybe planted a seed in both of us, which is pretty cool. I always had a little bit of that entrepreneurial bug, and I can't say I kind of stood there and said, hey, I want to be the CEO of something one day, but I always like being in charge. I was talking about playing sports. Like I was captain of the hockey team in high school, and I was a sophomore. I was like a 13-year-old sophomore. I always kind of had leadership roles, and so anything I have ever gone into, I didn't assume that I would just kind of sit in the back seat. So whether it was CEO or just somebody up on top, I knew I'd be up there somewhere.
And maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But you can see, I like that. You see it festering. You got this little thing, and maybe you ignore it and you go a different way, but maybe you don't. And always like to be in charge. I call myself, and others call me the same, a control freak. If you're a bit of a control freak and you can control it so you're not an asshole, which I'm still working on, and you always want to be in charge, but you're wise and mature enough to let other people be in charge and take other people's opinions, you might be a good entrepreneur. But you got to throw that other stuff that we were talking about earlier on the show. Now, I want to go back again. You made some sacrifices in your life, and moving to Amsterdam is probably a big one. What sacrifice do you think of constantly when you just pops in your head? I am so glad I did it. I didn't want to do it at the time. I didn't know if it was a good idea. What would you go back and say? Hey, Chip, make that sacrifice again. It was the best idea you ever had.
Yeah. So at IDEX, when I was running kind of running strategy for a group of businesses, we had gone and done a change of the operating model with how those companies operate. And so I was put in charge of helping all of our existing businesses essentially, undertake this new operating model change. And it was, it's public information, it's out there. We implemented the 80-20 operating model, which, sounds simple, kind of the whole, 80% of customers, make, or 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of customers, similar products. There's actually a much deeper model you can integrate around that. So I went and worked with a collection of those 18 businesses all around the world in an 18-month period. And they were literally all over the world. So I traveled 80-90% of the time, something like that, for almost a year and a half. Get to the point where, sort of joking, but my daughter, who was, I don't know, 1.5 at the time, maybe something like that. Anytime she'd see a car pull up and down her driveway, she would just stand there and wave and say, bye.
Oh,
bye.
no. Oh, no.
There was a car coming to pick me up, and for me to be gone for another week or so.
Oh, no.
So it was well worth it in terms of laying the groundwork. But and so I look at it and say, hey, if you're going to do that, do that all over again for sure. But man, it was a big commitment.
And I had a similar sacrifice when I did an all around the world thing, and I left my kids at home, and I knew it was going to be great. My wife was pissed for about 15 years.
Yeah.
Were you in trouble for a few years after that with other people in your family?
It's funny. I wasn't, and I say you mentioned before about Amsterdam must have been a sacrifice. Yeah, I think people shouldn't be afraid to have your career kind of it's somewhat like kind of controlling the throttle on your career, right? I think there's certain points where you're all the way down, you're redlining, and like you're going a million miles an hour. There's other points you kind of just naturally take your hand off the throttle just a little tiny bit for all the right reasons. So we got married in July of 2008. We moved to Amsterdam in November of 2008, and honestly, like it was kind of like taking the hand off the throttle a little bit, because the commitments that we're doing 80 to 100 hours a week at KPMG a lot of weeks. Then you go to a European working lifestyle, and it's not. I mean, it's a 37.5-hour work week, and this is now we're 2008, 2009. The economy's taking a dump, and we still had long working hours, but the rules in the Netherlands at the time were such that if you worked any overtime, which we did routinely, you either had to get paid out or you had to take it as vacation. And KPMG at the time said, like, hey, with everything going on in the economy, we're not going to pay you out for these hours, which we always have. You have to take it as vacation. And so that 18-month period was a lot of vacation.
Oh, sounds good.
And it was great because we really spent a lot of time working on our marriage. We traveled a lot. It was kind of like a 2-year honeymoon, and laid the foundation for being able to tackle the really hard stuff down the road. I mean, if we hadn't done that, if we hadn't traveled that much, spent that much time together, and really, focusing on the foundation of our marriage, I don't think we would have made it through the entrepreneurial years, quite honestly.
Wow. There we go. Serendipity again. So if you're listening, you can tell what Chip's personality is like. He's looking under rocks and always finding something awesome, and always looking for the best in things. He's thinking far in advance. Maybe he doesn't even know he's thinking far in advance, but everything's an opportunity. And Chip, how do people find you? Do they go to, what's your company website?
It's that's a good question. I have no idea. I think it's cfstech.com. The best place to find me is LinkedIn. I'm
Okay.
not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. Yeah, look for Chip McAslan LinkedIn, and you can find me on there.
McAslan. And if you want to just check out a different industry, if you're in finance, you're in M&A, you're looking for a cool job with a cool company, check out Chip, CHIP McAslan on LinkedIn. Chip, thank you so much. I've got 9 pages of notes from this discussion. I really appreciate your insight. I really appreciate the serendipitous opportunities you shared. I really appreciate you broadening everyone's horizon to like 75 different job opportunities today. Happy 4th of July. Enjoy that white picket fence down in the Gale Shores, which I don't think they have any white picket fences down there. I appreciate you making time on the Friday before 4th of July, no less.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. You too. Enjoy the holiday. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun doing a little trip down memory lane and hopefully sharing some insight with everybody.
Oh, I'm sure everybody benefited. Thanks a lot for being on the Edge of Excellence.
Thanks.